Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the World Zakat Forum webinar series. I, Arwa will serve as your master of ceremony will serve as your moderator for today's webinar series. Today, under the topic of strengthening research in global zakat development, we have two speakers who are Professor Azmi Omar from Malaysia and Dr. Irfan Syauqi Beik from Indonesia. As we know, in the Al-Quran and Al-Hadith, that it dictates that zakat is one of the pillars of Islam, and people who fulfill the nisab are obliged to pay zakat. Its significance to the national and communal development is irrefutable, as it contributes to social security and harmony by helping close the gap between the have and the have-not, and strengthen the economic independence for the Muslim society. The Zakah Fund is also an important financial source for the country in addition to tax funds. Generally speaking, the distribution of Zakah Fund could help generate and steer the country's economic activities through increase in individuals' purchasing power, and it is basically the material as well as spiritual form of worship. This aims to purify one's wealth and positions by giving a certain amount of money to the poor and the needy from the net income exceeding nisab after a complete year. Therefore, the research of zakat is important to developing resources and zakat potentials. According to the sum of the last estimation, current zakat collection potential reaching 600 billion annually, it is a huge potential that could be developed to alleviating poverty. Therefore, the purpose of this event, a webinar, is aimed to know how to conduct research of zakat. What is the specific research that may be developed in zakat, how to build big data in zakat, and how to collect global data of zakat. Today's session will be started with a presentation from Professor Azmi Omar from Malaysia. Hello, Professor Azmi Omar, can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes, thank you very much, Sister Arwa.
Yes.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Let me go by going straight to the table. If you can go to page 5 of my table. If Sister Arwa can show the table on the wealth distribution and income inequality. And go straight to table, yes. I mean, what I intend to do in this particular case is to begin by looking at the states of wealth distribution and income inequality in selected Muslim countries. The idea here is to give some perspective before we go or we dive deeper into the subject matter of zakat and how zakat can be used as a tool for poverty alleviation, as a tool for financial inclusion, and related issues. For example, if you look at the data that I've showed here, based on the World Economic Forum Inclusive Development Index 2018, you will see that in selected Muslim countries, the one that I put in red, I put a threshold of 40% in the case of net income Gini index. In the case of wealth Gini index, I put a threshold of 50%. If you look at the table, you will see that countries from the net income Gini index, you will see that countries like Egypt, Tajikistan, Indonesia, Malaysia has a big disparity in terms of income. Secondly, if you look at wealth Gini index, all Muslim countries, all countries here in this particular table have significantly high wealth Gini index, which again indicates there's a big disparity of wealth among the population in those respective countries. So you will see that what we're saying is that Muslim countries generally have high income inequality, high wealth inequality. At the same time, if you look at the poverty rate of many Muslim countries, among the OIC countries, generally you find that we have high poverty rate. in this particular example that I showed, Mauritania, for example, 23.6%, Senegal 67.5%, Mali 79%, Bangladesh almost 59%, Pakistan almost 40%, Tajikistan 20%, Indonesia 33.8%, Malaysia, although is shown to be low 3.1%, but a new figure which uses which was revised recently would have a higher figure in terms of the poverty rate in Malaysia, more than 3.1%. So what we are saying is that given that we have huge income inequality, wealth inequality, as well as high poverty rate in Muslim countries, then the question is, how do we then use zakat to address those issues? In other words, can we use zakat as a tool for poverty alleviation? And of course, the subject matter here is to look at a broader picture in terms of research. Before I go further into the subject, let me go to the next slide, economic outlook, which is in slide number 7. Yes, okay. So if you look at the economic outlook based on the Asian Development Bank, which was issued recently at the end of June, if you notice, you have for 2020 you have two columns. ADO stands for Asian Development Bank Outlook 2020, and then ADOS refers to the recent revised figure in June, and the same thing goes for 2021. And here what I did was I took the Southeast Asian countries. So if you look countries that are impacted by COVID, you will see that all countries in Southeast Asia are expected to be in recession, with the exception in 2021, all of Southeast Asian countries are expected to be positive. So which means that in 2020, we are expecting that a large number of Southeast Asian countries will be in recession, okay? And at the same time, as you know, poverty will also increase and people are suffering due to COVID-19. So again, the issue that we say is that then zakat has to play a very important role. Okay, zakat has to play a very important role, not only to address poverty alleviation or financial inclusion, as we said, but also to address the immediate situation, which is COVID-19. Let me go straight to the issue on the slide. Can you go to slide number 9? I want to go rather quickly without having. So if you look in terms of the research, sorry, go back to the slide before. If you look in terms of the research of zakat, you have in terms of zakat collection, and which Sister Arwa mentioned earlier on about zakat potential. So you have the issues of zakat collection, the issues of zakat management, and the issues of zakat distribution, and some other issues. So these are the areas that I'm going to speak on. Can we go next? Okay, so if you look at in terms of zakat collection, we have the discussion in terms of zakat potential, amount of zakat to be collected in a respective country, and then regionally as well as globally. Okay, and then the discussion is also in terms of, are we focusing purely on individuals? Can we go beyond individuals? Like, for example, companies owned by Muslims, or Muslims have some shareholding in those companies. And this refers to OIC countries. Okay, so we need to look at that particular aspect as well, rather than discussing about zakat that is to be paid by individuals, or items of zakat that can be included, but we have yet to look at in terms of zakat to be paid by companies in OIC countries. Okay, because we see that in many countries, zakat tend to be paid by individuals, not so much by companies. Okay, so addressing also the estimation of zakat potential, not only individuals, but also Muslim-owned companies. Okay, and then the other part is on the items liable for zakat. Are we looking at the current traditional definition, or should we be looking beyond the current traditional definition? For example, in Malaysia as well as Indonesia, there is an acceptance in terms of zakat on salary. Although salary is not wealth, but it's an income, but zakat on salary. But again, if you take zakat on individuals, zakat on companies, zakat on salary or on income, is it enough to address the issue of poverty alleviation? Okay, so that's another angle that we need to look at in terms of the research aspect. Then we also look in terms of linking zakat and taxation. For example, when individuals pay zakat, they do not want to be, at least from a number of studies, to see that people do not want to be double burdened, which means that they don't want to pay zakat as well as tax. If you can integrate zakat and tax together, that would have a better impact to the zakat collection. So bringing together zakat and tax in a particular country, and this can only be done in a country where zakat is, for example, mandatory. Okay, mandatory by the authorities. Then the other one is research on factors affecting zakat collection, relating to, are religious people only paying zakat? What about non-religious people? Issue of how easy to pay zakat. Issue of trust and transparency. The issue of trust and transparency is cutting across the, not only in terms of collection, but also in terms of distribution. Trust and transparency. Do people trust zakat organization? Do people trust NGOs, social organization when they pay zakat? Are the zakat money going to the right recipients or right beneficiaries? How easy is payment of zakat? If it is difficult, will people still be, be considered as, fulfilling diligently the payment of zakat? And of course, in relation to the ease of payment of zakat, there is the issue of technology, the issue of big data, the issue of artificial intelligence. So technology plays a very important role. In order to address the issue of trust and transparency, we need to use technology in this particular case. And we can discuss further on technology when we look at the other sections. Next one. On the issue of zakat management, again, trust and transparency has always been an issue. If many studies have shown that due to lack of trust, people do not pay zakat to the authorities, they pay zakat directly. So again, the tool of zakat as an instrument to address poverty will not be strong or will not be powerful because it's paid by individual and to that particular beneficiary. So there is no comprehensive information. We do not know whether zakat can be really used as a tool to alleviate poverty. On zakat efficiency, the way zakat is being managed, whether it is efficient or not. So again, related to trust, those who are managing zakat in a particular country, whether they are efficient or not. If they are not efficient, then also that relates to non-payment of zakat to the religious authority and payment to the other to individual NGOs. Relating to zakat efficiency also is the zakat body. For example, in Indonesia, you have a single body, the BAZNAS, collecting zakat. In Malaysia, we have state religious authorities. Within the state religious authorities, we have what we call a board, zakat board. So you have different models. But again, just like in the context of financial institutions, we need to have a supervisory framework, we need to have laws, we need to have governance. So which means that in a country where there is no enabling environment, therefore, zakat may not have the right, I would say, the right support for it to be efficient, for it to be transparent. So we need to develop zakat enabling environment. So in this particular case, researchers, for example, can look at the various enabling environment of zakat based on respective countries and come out with a model that other countries can emulate. For example, in the work that I did before at IDB, IRTI, we try to have a model zakat enabling environment, which means that a model law for zakat, a model law for governance and supervisory framework for zakat. Without a proper enabling environment, then zakat may not be having the right what we call it, trust and transparency, and also zakat guidelines and standard. And zakat guidelines and standard is very important. In the case of financial institutions, like in the case of takaful, banking, and so on, we have guidelines and standard. But in the case of zakat at the moment, there is no standards. Again, if we want to bring professionalism, we want to bring efficiency and trust, then there must be development of zakat guidelines and standard. Again, this could be another area of research that we want to do to look at those guidelines. And I'm glad some work has been done by BAZNAS together with Bank Indonesia in this particular case. Next slide. Okay, on zakat distribution, on the issue of productive versus consumptive, there's a lot of studies looking at that. But we also need to look in terms of, can we extend the beneficiaries of zakat to not only to Muslims, but also non-Muslims? Okay, that's also another study. Of course, it could be a fiqh study. And what type of non-Muslims do we extend? Although we do know that the mu'alaf category, the newly convert, can be given zakat, but what about other categories? What about fi sabilillah? How do we develop parameters for that? Okay, can we develop parameters so that we can use this fi sabilillah to really make an impactful thing? Zakat collection and distribution, particularly in the context of distribution, is it going to be localized, only distributed in the local region, or in a particular country, or in a region, or international? I do know, for example, some scholars disagree of using zakat money for international beyond their borders. Okay, so those are issues. And of course, distribution using technology is very important. Using artificial intelligence, using big data is very important in the context of zakat distribution. And also, finally, is the issue of impact. We have been collecting, we have been distributing zakat, but are they impacting the communities? So what is the impact? So we need to measure those impact. We need to develop impact indicators. Okay, when we talk about impact investment, similarly, zakat also, we need to have impact indicators for zakat, whether they are really impactful or not. Okay, and finally, can we go to the last one? Finally, is in terms of other areas that we need to research on, again, which is related to zakat collection, management, and distribution, is the issue of big data and artificial intelligence. How do we use technology for this? For example, in my interaction and work with many other institutions, I believe using technology can address, one is the issue of collection, secondly, the issue of distribution, third is the issue of trust, and fourth is the issue of, I would say, issue of impact. We need to develop, using technology, zakat applications, where people will see how much zakat being collected real time, how much is distributed, who received those zakat, what are the programs being utilized for those for zakat beneficiaries, and what are the impact to those beneficiaries. So technology is very important, collecting of data, having the right data for our own decision making later on. Because again, what we need to do is that once we have this information about zakat, data about zakat, then government can integrate both zakat as well as social support programs, so that those programs are targeted, and then it can really help the poor. At the moment, we see in many countries, again, this is another area of study, we have zakat being distributed, collected and distributed, and we have social support programs by the government and not integrated altogether. So much so that we are not able to fully make zakat as a very important tool for poverty eradication. We always study zakat and we always talk about the potential of zakat as a tool for poverty alleviation, but there is no case study, for example, that looks both zakat and social support, combining both the authorities that collect zakat, the authorities of the government that handle social support, and provided the right tool, right targeted tool to address poverty alleviation. Okay, and then to do that, we need to have an integrated database. Okay, integrated database. So we cannot have a database that is owned only by the zakat authorities and another database owned by the government. It should be integrated. So having an integrated database, again using data and big data and artificial intelligence, we would be able to develop a targeted approach, a focused approach with a comprehensive support, which means that really we can make zakat as a very important tool to address poverty alleviation and financial inclusion. So to do that, again, as I said, it requires a revamp of the way we look at how zakat is being collected, what are the zakatable items, okay? Uh, are we going to look at traditionally the way zakat is being measured? Should we be looking at different ways of measuring zakat, which means that enhanced ways of measuring zakat, like the zakat study on the potential on zakat collection, where we have different ways of, ways of looking at zakatable items, and then integrating with government and zakat in order to develop a comprehensive tool to address poverty. So I believe those are the broad areas of zakat that can be researched upon. And of course, in terms of methodology, the methodology can vary, but at the end of the day, my suggestion is that whilst it is good for us to publish in journals, it is very important for us to produce policy papers for governments to use as development of their policy and implementation. Because as we know, when we produce journal papers, it is good for academics, but it is hardly read by government or policymakers. So we also need to address, apart from journal papers, we need to address that issue by simplifying the research papers and turning it into policy papers so that those papers can be utilized by the government, by the policymakers in their formulation of policies for zakat as well as social support program. So with that, I thank the organizer, BAZNAS, and I'm open for questions later on. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Azmi, for your presentation. So now, audience, we will be moving on to the discussion session of today's webinar. So as we seen in the previous presentation from Professor Azmi, is that there are various areas that we need to focus on in researching about zakat and strengthening the research in zakat and so on, such as in the collection and the management and maybe the distribution itself, such as whether or not how to collect zakat from companies, or how that we should create this supporting zakat support. We should create a zakat enabling environment and so on. Now, first of all, I would like to move on to Dr. Irfan Syauqi Beik and would like to ask, in your perspective, how do you what areas do you feel that maybe, as what Professor Azmi has presented before, what areas do you think we should specifically focus on for research in zakat, and how those specific areas will be very impactful towards zakat management and zakat global development?
Okay, thank you very much, Sister Arwa. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon in Indonesia. And also my Professor Azmi. May Allah always bless you. And regarding to your question, Sister Arwa, that in our perspective in BAZNAS, initially we realized the importance of this research as part of our policy formulation since the establishment of BAZNAS Center of Strategic Studies in the year 2016. So 4 years ago, on August 2016, BAZNAS established this Center of Strategic Studies. And the mandate of this center is to provide the BAZNAS leaders important input that can be used to formulate the zakat policy in the country, and at the same time we can increase the quality of management of zakat, in the country, because in Indonesia we are facing a problem of huge gap between zakat potential and zakat actual collection. So we want to reduce that gap, and one way to reduce the gap is by having policy that is based on studies that are conducted based on a scientific approach. Yeah, because normally when we do some policies, yeah, in the case of zakat in Indonesia, normally the policy is not based on deep studies, yeah, scientifically. So that's why we established that one. And there are 5 areas of studies that are still conducted by BAZNAS Center of Strategic Studies. The first one is area on the system itself, the national system of zakat. Yeah, how do we measure the national? How do we define the effective and efficient national zakat system itself, and how much it can approach the poverty alleviation, and how much it can reduce the number of poverty rate, for example. Yeah. So regarding this, we have created what we call as the National Zakat Index, or NZI. So this National Zakat Index is used to measure the national system performance as a whole, from the macro perspective as well as from the micro perspective. Macro, that covers regulation, the support from the government at national as well as at provincial and local levels, yeah, including the database system that we have. And on the micro level, we are measuring the core activities of zakat institution, started from collection, management, distribution, and also on the reporting and accountability aspect. And then also we measure the impact of zakat towards the recipients or the mustahik. So this is what we are doing in the first area, yeah, the national system itself. And then what we do, the second one is we come up with the more specific research on the basic or core activities of zakat institution. Yeah, we touch the issue of collection. That's why we have collection index, including the literacy, zakat literacy index. Last year we have issued zakat literacy index. This year, alhamdulillah, the literacy index has been issued. The survey has been conducted. Although the entire studies are still on process, but some findings have been there. For example, according to our findings, yeah, we classify the literacy index into 3 parts: the low level of literacy, the moderate level of literacy, and high level of literacy. And what we found was that the literacy index of zakat of the Indonesian people is still at moderate level. So it means that hundreds of years we are paying zakat. Yeah? The practice that has been done since even before the independence. So what happened? The knowledge and understanding of the society is still in the middle level or moderate level of literacy. So it means that we need to increase, yeah, this literacy by intensifying the campaign on zakat awareness, so that many people will contribute to pay zakat, because in Indonesia the zakat system is still voluntary. Yeah, it is obligatory from a religious perspective, but still voluntary from the state perspective. It's of course different from Malaysia. Similarly, in the area of distribution, we measure the impact. We have welfare index. Also, in the empowerment process, we have empowerment index of zakat to see and to observe whether the economic productive program, utilizing all the potentials in order to increase the economic level of the mustahik, has achieved its objective or not. And we need some measurement here in this regard. Similarly, in the reporting index, we have formulated the financial ratio for zakat institutions, and now we have an index for that one to measure whether zakat institutions in Indonesia has been efficient in its operation or not. So this kind of research, I think, is very needed. And of course, as Prof. Azmi mentioned, that we also need to adapt with the current condition in which the use of technology is very, very important. Yeah, that's why the research should also touch the issue of this technology. And in the process of research itself, including the data collection, the utilization of this technology is very important. Yeah, so I think it's very important for us. So why we are initiating this kind of research? Because according to our analysis, although it is still need to be proven, we need to verify this further in our further research, that because of this research-based policy, the national collection can be doubled within 3 years. In 2016 to 2019, within 3 years, the total national collection can be doubled, 102% within 3 years. Yeah, from 5 trillion or around maybe, let's say around 300, yeah, sorry, 400, almost 400 million US dollar. Now it reached now almost 800 million US dollar. Within 3 years, we can double the collection. And according to my observation, it is because of the policy that is formulated based on the research. That's why, based on our experience, we believe that the role of research is very, very important. The role of research is it's extremely needed, yeah, by zakat institutions, because it will help us, it will help them, it will help all the zakat organization in performing, in giving their best performance, yeah, so that people can be convinced and the trust can be earned, yeah, because trust is very important, and trust can only be earned through maintaining transparency and accountability. And in that way, in order to achieve transparency and accountability, so that people will put their trust to us, we need research, yeah. So that's why the role of research is very important in our case, yeah, in Indonesia especially. Back to you, Sister Arwa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Irfan. So as we can see that the Dr. Irfan has gave us many examples of what BAZNAS in Indonesia itself has implemented in their research in trying to strengthen the role of zakat and so on, and create policy-based, research-based policies within the zakat regulations in Indonesia. Now, to Professor Azmi, how is the current condition of these researches and zakat in Malaysia itself? What are the current research that is going on in Malaysia regarding zakat?
Okay, thank you very much, Sister Arwa. You see, let me just go a little bit back before I answer your question. I mean, if we look at the structure of zakat in Malaysia, it's different from other countries. For example, in Malaysia, we have, I would say, three types of how zakat is being managed. For example, one is we have zakat, which is a department. Okay, zakat, which is a department, unlike BAZNAS, which is a standalone body. But in Malaysia, zakat is a department in a religious department of a province. The equivalent in Indonesia is a province. So we have a state in Malaysia. So in a province, we have the religious authority, because bear in mind what we call it, zakat is under the religious authority and under the sultan of each respective states. So we have a zakat department which is under the religious authority in a province. That's one example. The other one is where we have zakat as a board. Okay, zakat as a board. But again, there are two types here. One, zakat as a board that reports to the state religious authority, and the other one is zakat as a board that reports direct to the sultan. So you have that variation. So as you can see, the more layers we have, the more bureaucracy that we have. That is a principle. So what we need to do is to look at one in the particular context in Malaysia is to have a standardized regulation, zakat regulation. Indonesia being a unitary, which means that BAZNAS handles everything, but in Malaysia, because we have different states, so we have slightly different zakat regulations in Malaysia. Okay, so I just spoke on the same topic last week on this with one of the state religious zakat body. So what I'm saying is that it is sensitive in Malaysia, but we need to address this. We need to have a standardized zakat regulation in Malaysia. The analogy is this. If you take the case of Islamic banking, takaful, globally, we have been working towards standardizing standards. Even Sharia standards, we're trying to standardize. And the fact that we have IFSB, Islamic Financial Services Board, we have IOFI. Of course, they are different entities, different roles, but at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is to standardize, to develop standards. One is developing prudential standards. The other one is developing accounting and Sharia standards, the IOFI. So again, we need to standardize regulations in a country and later on internationally. Because if we want to professionalize, we want to make zakat as an efficient organization, a real tool, as we said, a real tool to address poverty in the Muslim world, that we need to standardize this thing. It takes a lot of effort. So I think one of the research that we need to do first within Malaysia is to come up with a standardized regulation. I think that's one. It will take some time, but if there are visions, people are committed, then obviously we need to have a standardized regulation. Just like we have a standardized for banking, takaful, and so on. So apart from regulation, which is much broader, is the zakat standards, as I mentioned. And zakat standards, I hope to see, I'm not sure whether during my lifetime, but at least I hope to see what we call standard zakat guidelines globally. Zakat guidelines, zakat standards. Hopefully during my lifetime, if it is achievable, because we are successful in banking, takaful, capital market, we are successful, but zakat, wakaf, and so on, still these are new, but we need to work on this. So I think there is a lot of research that needs to be done. For example, take a very simple example, zakat on income. It took many years in Indonesia to get it approved, but let alone in other countries. So if we are able to standardize, this is very important. Yes. I stop at that. Okay.
And I think, if I may add, that one of your legacy is the collaboration that produced Zakat Core Principle, Prof. Azmi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I believe that zakat is very important, as a tool. If you look at the Quran, as rightly mentioned by Sister Arwa, it is the tool that is mentioned in the Quran. Zakat, sadaqah, mentioned in the Quran, yet we are not able to use it to its true function. Okay, so I'm glad that BAZNAS is doing it professionally. You have your research team, but how many in Malaysia, for example, or other countries have a research department in the zakat organization? Not many. So this, in many countries, is done by academics rather than people who are involved in zakat itself. So we need to get zakat organization or zakat authority to conduct research, to develop policies for this. So the approach that is done by BAZNAS is the right approach. you make decision based on research. You don't make decision based on hunch. So any formulation of decision policies are based on research that is being done first, and that should be the right way. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Azmi. So, as we can see to the audience, what Professor Azmi has explained to us and what Dr. Irfan has explained to us, that Indonesia and Malaysia, even though both are Muslim countries and both have a large potential in zakat, but the regulations will always differ because there are different types of different models of the organizations and how we manage the zakat organizations in every country. So the next question that I would like to ask is that what from both Dr. Irfan and from Professor Azmi, what kind of model, or what would you suggest for a general global standard in zakat management is, because as we can see, like in Malaysia and Indonesia, that there are very different ways in managing the zakat. What would you like to suggest, something that we can create a research on that will be able to become a global standard in the entire world? Maybe from Dr. Irfan first.
Yeah, it's a very tough question. What we have done so far, we are, trying to communicate among the zakat practitioners, yeah, including zakat regulators and also zakat institutions all over the world. And we have a very diverse system of zakat management. Indonesia is different from Malaysia, similarly with even Singapore or in other Muslim countries. Yeah, even they have various system. Like in Saudi Arabia, for the collection side, it is under the Ministry of Finance. For the distribution side, it is under the Ministry of Social Welfare, etc. So, given this diverse system, of course, so far there is no standardized system of zakat at the moment. But what we are trying to do is we come up with the standardized the management aspect, the elements and what elements that are very important. Yeah, whatever the type of system, these elements should exist. These elements should be there in order to have more effective zakat system. And of course, in order to produce this effective zakat system, the research pillar is very important because according to our experience here in Indonesia, research has helped a lot. Research has helped us better. So I think the same or the similar experience should also be felt by other countries. That's why communication is very important. And at the moment, we have a World Zakat Forum, and maybe one day, yeah, under this World Zakat Forum, we may have another World Zakat Forum, but focusing another, you can say, institution under the World Zakat Forum focusing on research. Yeah, so we can have uh, joint research, and also we can identify the needs of each country. Yeah, to have a more effective system, and we can learn each other. Yeah, so at this moment, this is the process that is going on here within the global zakat community. And of course, introduction of research to this global zakat community needs to be increased. So collaboration with the academicians, yeah, the academic world play very important role in this regard. So we cannot move on alone. We need to synergize ourselves with especially the academicians so that we can have more qualified and better research. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Irfan, and maybe a perspective from Professor Azmi.
Yes, thank you. Just a short one, since Prof. Irfan has elaborated in detail. What I would say is that all of this can be covered under what we call an zakat management system, because some countries is dispersed, as Prof. Dr. Irfan mentioned earlier on. In some countries, you have collection is different, distribution is different, some integrated, different models. But notwithstanding that, you need to have the right regulations for it to be useful as a tool to address the issue of poverty alleviation, economic development, and so on. So we need to have that. So one way to do it is again to work with, for example, multilateral institutions, the likes of for example, Islamic Development Bank, for example, to come up with a model zakat guidelines, zakat regulation first. Okay, and then after we have done that, then we would then get it not get it accepted by countries. Okay, for example, during my time, we assist Maldives to come out with the zakat regulation. And in preparation of the zakat regulation, we did benchmarking study across the world. So finding the best. So what we want to do is that when a country wants to implement zakat or they want to revise the law, then they should be using the best model rather than a law which is not up to date, not current. So we need to develop a law that is up to date, that can be really useful. So, and that law will have incorporated, for example, having like BAZNAS kind of organization in that particular country, where you have the collection, distribution, and you have the proper supervisory framework. Because we have also to differentiate between zakat organization and zakat regulator. A zakat regulator regulates zakat organization to ensure that it fulfills its proper role. And that is transparency, and that is efficiency. Okay, that's my short point.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Azmi. So, as we can see, that the most important thing is that we need an enabling environment that will support the government system in creating regulations that will support the role of zakat, and that we also have to always uphold the research pillars when we are conducting researches, whether especially when it's in zakat, and also that there should be certain elements be that must be present when we are conducting these kind of research. So now to our final question before we end our session. Is so we know that big data right now it plays a very important role in research across the globe. So how do you suggest we build this big data in zakat, and how impactful is this big data towards the global zakat development? Maybe first from Professor Azmi.
Okay, I mean, I can talk at least from my experience in Malaysia. I've seen, for example, one application that is very successful, where that application provide real-time data in terms of zakat collection and zakat distribution. It's done by one of the states in Malaysia. To me, that is a very excellent example where they utilize the data in terms of the amount of money being collected and then the amount of money being distributed. However, the limitation is that one is impact component is very basic. So you need to address having impact indicators that really looks at people when they first receive zakat until they reach, at a certain level. So we want to see that impact. So it's not there. So that's something that we need to enhance further. And also in terms of utilizing the big data, because in Malaysia is more focused on, for example, that particular province, it does not give you the overall picture in Malaysia, whereas BAZNAS has the country's perspective. So imagine if you are able to use data from, say, for example, from income tax or your tax authorities, then you'll be able to see how many people actually potentially are able to pay zakat. So using that big data collection, you're able to even estimate zakat in a particular country. based on number of people paying tax, or number of people receiving support from the government. Okay, so using data, it will enable us to decide in terms of what are the potential people paying zakat and who have paid zakat and who have not paid zakat. Again, because Indonesia is not voluntary, even in Malaysia, it's not compulsory as well. Sorry, I'm saying that it's not compulsory. Although we say that zakat is compulsory, religiously compulsory, obligatory, but even in Malaysia, there are people who are not paying zakat. Because tax, yes, it's obligatory, but zakat is still not obligatory from a central government point of view. But however, if people pay zakat, then they can get tax exemption on that. Okay, tax rebate, which means that whatever they pay, it will reduce their tax. So in that way, it creates an incentive for people to pay. So that's also one area that we can look at, is that using data from both tax authorities as well as social support, integrate that data and come up with zakat potential of a country. Okay, and then you can develop specific programs to support that. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now maybe a perspective from Dr. Irfan.
Yeah, I fully agree with Prof. Azmi that we need to collaborate and utilize all the data that are available in various authorities. Yeah, for example, the tax authority, yeah, as mentioned, and also other in Indonesia we have complete data of our citizen, for example, managed by the Ministry of Home Affairs, yeah, or Internal Affairs. We can also use that data, and also we need to collaborate as well with other or certain platform that provides various services to the people, yeah, and this business can capture the behavior of the people. Yeah, for example, in the case of Indonesia, we have Gojek or Grab platform, for example, with more than 100 million users, yeah, and all the transactions are there, etc. So how we manage this uh, information is also another. But at the moment, what we can get so far is the data provided by the government, especially in terms of the income level. And when we have this kind of data, yeah, having the various income level of the people, yeah, so we can also analyze and formulate which program that will be very effective, yeah, to deal with a certain group of population. Let's say for the bottom 40%, of course, it will be more on distribution and empowerment programs. But for the middle 40 and top 20, so we need to create or to provide or to develop a campaign that can create more awareness from this group of people. Of course, this is a very important thing. And also, we have observed research conducted by other institutions. Like recently, we received the research information from one of the institution in Indonesia. Its name is Alpha Research, and in which they can capture the giving behavior of the people, and they found that the number of donation, the number of people donating money in the form of zakat, infak, sedekah, wakaf, yeah, and other social donation increased by 2%, from 4.2% to 6 point something percent. So more than 2%. So it means that during this COVID-19 pandemic, the number of people donating some portion of their fund is increasing. So it's a very interesting study. And of course, this will enrich our policy formulation because we have the data given by this institution. So I think collaborating all the institutions that are conducting, data gathering, data collection, yeah, I think it's very important, and this can be used to formulate our policy. Thank you, Sister Arwa.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Irfan. So, as we can see, what Professor Azmi and Dr. Irfan has explained to us is that by using this data, we can not only estimate how much zakat will be collected in the years to come, but also we can estimate the potential, and we can also see who the current payers are, who the mustahik are, and we can also see, and we can also use data by not only from academicians, but also we can by collaborating with other say organizations and businesses, that so we can help each other and hand create a better environment for zakat. um, so before we close today's session, maybe the Professor Azmi or and Dr. Irfan, you would like to deliver a message towards the audience regarding about research and zakat, maybe starting from Dr. Irfan first.
Yeah, I think for my closing statement is that the role of research is very important, and I hope that all the zakat regulators and institutions, yeah, in all over the world realize the importance of research and try to use this research as part of policy formulation. And of course, if at this stage there is a shortage of resources, yeah, responsible for conducting research, I think collaboration with universities and academicians that have interest and strong focus on zakat can be done, I think. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Irfan, and maybe from Professor Azmi.
Thank you. I would like to echo the same thing. To me, is when zakat organizations wants to make any major decision or policies, then it should be based on informed decision, which means that it must be based on research. But of course, zakat authorities have limitations in terms of conducting research. Reason is because they may not have the right personnel. Hence, collaborating with institutions, universities, researchers, and research institutes, so that we make better decisions. In doing with collaborating with universities, it's also important for us to continue networking regionally and globally. So which means that when we make policies also, we not only have research based on a specific country, but we also know what happened in other countries, so that you make a better decision. So collaboration in research, both in a country, regionally as internationally, it's very important. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Azmi, for your closing statement. Well, that wraps up for today's session. Thank you very much to our speakers from Professor Azmi from Malaysia. Thank you very much, and also Dr. Irfan. Thank you very much. From today's discussion, we can see that there are many potentials and many areas within zakat that are in need of research, and that research it must be strengthened, so that also the role of zakat in alleviating poverty around the world is also strengthened, and that also the sorry and also that the research that we conduct will not only give more insight towards academicians, but it will also be beneficial for the governments and for the policies that will be held in with those countries. So that is all for today. Before I close the session, that we have a short announcement that there will be a Islamic economics winter course held from the 14th till 23rd of September by IPB University, and it is free from registration with speakers and lecturers from around the world regarding the theme of Islamic social finance and its role for achieving sustainable development goals. The registration requirements are an essay, a certification letter, and a participant commitment letter, and the registration will be open until August 17th, 2020. Uh, so we would like to finally close today's session and also thank the audience for their time and hope that this webinar was beneficial for all of us. Amin ya rabbal alamin. May we all stay safe during this pandemic and pray that this pandemic will soon be over. And thank you and see you on the next World Zakat Forum webinar.
Thank
Wassalamualaikum
you.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Thank you very much.
wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you very much.